Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back to episode 7 of Sing Fu Shan. Now, in this episode, we're going to be doing a lot. First, if you recall in the last video, I was trying to decide whether I wanted to do a sort of a plaza type entrance here or if I wanted to do a water garden. And you can see at first, I was trying to meld the two ideas together, and it, in my opinion, wasn't working. I didn't feel like fooling around with all the edges and all that, so I ultimately decided to move that aside and just concentrate on making this a water garden. So that's what we're going to be working on for a while, just creating the basic path. We're also going to be creating a wall, which really does a good job of separating the garden itself from the surrounding terrain, because if you look around right now, it just kind of all blends together. It doesn't look too good. I'm making a tree right here because I figured if everyone else can make a tree, I can too. The only thing about this tree, what was I going to say about the tree? No, well, I can't remember. Oh, I remember. Sorry about that. So the thing about this tree is there aren't any assets in the game, obviously, that look anything like Asian trees for the most part, or the sort of pruned and carefully grown trees that you find in many, especially Japanese gardens, but also in a few Chinese gardens. So obviously, if you want that kind of look, you're going to have to make it yourself. And I've seen people make trees, so of course I thought, well, I can do that as well. And it's pretty simple. I end up making four actually, I believe, four different kinds, including a sort of cherry tree that I make later on. You'll see that. And they turn out well, so I think I'll sprinkle these throughout the build, especially once we get into the rear of the park, where we're going to have a lot of mountains. Obviously, the name of the park is Lucky Mountain, so we're going to have a big mountain in the back, so it'd be kind of cool, I think, to have some trees up at the top, maybe give it a little bit of forced perspective, because I want the rear of the build to look like really tall mountains with maybe some pagodas at the top and so forth. So we'll see once we get back there. So like I said, during the water garden, we did the wall, we made some trees, and towards the end of the episode, we're also going to do a little bit of planting around this garden. Not much, because I feel like we've done a lot of landscaping so far, and I really want to get to something a little bit more exciting. So just for you all to watch and for me to do. I really enjoy actually doing the landscaping. I've said that time and time again. I find it relaxing, and it is one of my strengths. But I think I'm going to actually go ahead and start the coaster in the next episode. So what we'll do is we'll do a little bit of landscaping in this episode once we get the wall up, and then I'll just come back to it here and there and put the garden together. It obviously has to be very thought out, the placement of objects and so forth, because in these kind of walled gardens, they're usually pretty meticulous about how they do things. I think that from my research, I think that Chinese gardens aren't quite the same as Japanese gardens in terms of how things are placed. I think Japanese gardens, from what I've seen, tend to go for almost a more minimalist look. So each item that is placed is very particularly placed. And Chinese gardens, the ones I've seen and the ones that I like, that I'm really modeling this after, tend to be more bushy, for want of a better way to put it. They're just more full and lush, and I like that style of garden. I really like something that looks like it's kind of overgrown. So I think mine will be a combination of particular about where I place things, but also a little more lush than what we would see in another style of garden. So with all that being said, right now I am working on the wall, and you'll really see once I get the wall up that it really does create a real separation between the surrounding landscape and the garden itself. And I really like this. I'm glad I came up with this idea of doing this wall, because it really separates this off. The only problem it really creates, though, and I hadn't really thought about this until I did it, but it became immediately obvious. Originally, I wanted the Pai Fong, which is the big entrance gate, just to be the entrance to the park. But once I decided to make those two buildings out front of that, that were going to house, say, some food stalls and places for people to buy the tickets and fast passes and all that kind of thing, I decided to go ahead and make just sort of an entrance area. So really what happens is we almost have two entrances here. To make a long story short, we really almost have two entrances here. We've got the garden itself, and then we've got the sort of entryway where we made in our earlier episodes, we made the sort of restaurant and the circular area with the dragon and the screens and so forth. But I think I'm okay with that. They serve sort of two different purposes. When the peeps come out from underground, they are immediately faced with this wall and they can't really see anything. So the park itself is going to reveal itself sequentially in layers. So the first thing they're going to see is this really nice garden, and then they're going to go through the Paifong into the area with the dragon and all that sort of thing, and then looming in the background will be the actual Lucky Mountain itself, and I think there's also going to be a dragon head on the top of that. So I think it's going to work out. I like the idea of it revealing itself slowly in 3 steps, and it's going to be visually interesting, I believe. So we'll see how it goes. If it's not working, we can always go back and do something else, but for now, like I said, I'm building this wall. It took a little while because I wanted to actually start on the module set as well, or the modular, set as well, that I plan to make for this, just to make things a little bit easier for myself, because thus far I have been really pretty much building each thing one time and then using it and then building something else. So I decided to go ahead and just make some modular pieces, like I've said a few times, and I'm going to upload them onto Steam. So that'll make things much simpler. And you see here that we've got the walls up and running already, so that looks good, and immediately makes a big impact. It really is. It separates all this apart. It looks much more authentic to me now. And so basically all I have to do is lay out the walls themselves, and then I have to make a little cornerstone or corner piece for the big square that this creates. One thing that I had not intended to do is that the Paifong here, you'll see I'm starting to lay down the pieces behind it. I've never seen one of these not standing on its own. Now, I'm no expert, obviously, in Chinese architecture, so I could be 100% wrong. If anyone knows more about it than I do, feel free to comment and let me know. But I've never actually seen one up against a wall like this. But I really like the way it looks, actually. Once I did it, it lends a certain sort of grandeur to the wall, and it creates a focal point. When the folks come through here, the first entrance, you can see they see exactly where they're headed to. I guess that's the weenie of this garden. So I like the way it looks. It may not be 100% authentic, but for me, that's okay. Ultimately, aesthetics are what are important in this particular build for me, and I like the way that looks. So you see here, I just made a little arched entrance, and then I made one on the other side. I wasn't 100% certain whether I should leave this flat like that or actually put the arch in there. I went ahead and put the arch and the roof underneath the Paifong, and I do like the way it looks. But if you have any feedback on that, feel free to let me know, because I'm always happy to hear comments on that. So like I said, in the next episode, we are going to start working on a coaster, and the whole point of this build, it's been going on for 7 episodes now, we haven't even got to the point of it, but the whole point of this build is to do a suspended coaster. And the name of it is most likely going to be called, Dragon's Breath. I have never actually done a suspended coaster either in Planet Coaster or No Limits 2. So I'm looking forward to doing it. I actually gave one a try. Okay, let me modify that. I gave one a try once in No Limits, if I remember correctly, and I gave one a try in Planet Coaster, now that I think about it. And I had a lot of trouble with the swinging. It wasn't coming out very realistic, and I've heard a lot of people online say that they've had that issue as well. So this is going to be, I'm interested to see how this goes. I really want to make sure that it's very realistic. And it certainly, I know, is going to have at least one part where we've got a big drop and a turn at the bottom of that drop, so sort of echoing the Big Bad Wolf, because that's certainly one of the better known suspended coasters. So it's going to be on the mountainside. There are going to be drops, ravines. There's going to be water, all sorts of things going on, and it's actually going to be, there's going to be some fire effects. The dragon is going to attack a village. I found online a few images of what I know in this build in particular. We've done the sort of very grand palace style architecture, Asian architecture, but I did find many pictures online of the sort of peasant style architecture that would have accompanied or been in the same sort of region as these grand palaces. So I'll use something like that as well, which is much simpler to build. So we should have the whole sort of little village towards the back of this. So I think it's going to be really cool. And the terrain is something I'm gonna take a lot of time with that, because I really have a very particular idea about how I want that to look. So I think it's gonna turn out well. So here you can see I'm doing the corner piece. This was fairly simple. Just copied 2 of the wall pieces and rotated them just to get the sort of 45-degree angle, remove what I didn't need, and then just made this corner. And I did not make a flying eave here because it didn't make any sense, and not every single Asian building, Chinese building has those on them, so I don't want to go wild with it. So one thing I did want to tell you about this is just in a random YouTube recommendation, I stumbled upon a Korean channel, Korean Planet Coaster channel, that was pretty cool. It was kind of like the Channel 5 gaming that we have, that, you know, people are familiar with here, where the dude highlights other people's construction. But this seems to be the same sort of channel. But the thing I really liked about it was seeing the difference just in general design of parks and so forth between, I guess, for want of a better way to put it, the Eastern Eye versus the Western Eye. It's kind of a stupid way to put it, but we have a very, in the West, a very, I suppose, European and American, North American, maybe South American way of looking at things that is completely different in the West. And the way some of the parks that they've featured on this particular channel have been designed is really just totally different than anything I've seen before. So it's been kind of inspirational. I like looking at things like that and just seeing things that are just totally different. So that's given me some inspiration. And we're not even talking about them doing traditional Asian architecture at all. We're talking about them designing parks in general. So but it did give me some ideas about some other things I could do in this build. So I really enjoy that channel. So if you ever happen to see a Korean channel, the writing is in Hangul, which is the Korean alphabet. So the entire channel is in Korean, so obviously I can't understand the word they're saying, but it's still interesting to look at. The only channels I usually watch are in either English or French, so it's interesting to see a totally different perspective, and it's definitely given me some fresh ideas for this build, so that should be coming up soon. But for now, I think that's about all I have to say for this build. You can see here we're getting on to the gardening. We're doing a little bit of gardening. I wanted a little waterfall in here. I always love a waterfall. So I put a little tiny one in here. And wouldn't this be cool? I'd really love to have a house and have like a sort of Asian-style garden in the back. I would really enjoy that quite a bit. So I guess this is my gardening. I know this is as close as I get right now. All I have is a balcony, so but you can see I'm just doing a little bit here, just putting some ferns around. I really like the in-game ferns. I put a few flowers. The trees are around. I'm trying to make it simple and very thoughtful, so that's not generally what I do, so this is a bit of a challenge for me. We'll see how it turns out. And I do end up making a sort of a cherry tree right here, which I'll definitely use elsewhere throughout this park. So far this little garden area looks good. I'll continue it along just as we go along here and there. I'll go back and do a little bit, and I'm not going to devote a whole episode to just doing the gardening here. So eventually it'll be working out. But in the next episode, like I said, we are going to be doing the coaster, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and let the music play, and I will talk to you next time. Enjoy the ride.